Hey, it's Sally Steele, and welcome to my show. This week's episode features my interview I did with Tom Hamilton of Aerosmith a few years back. Tom talks about the early days of Aerosmith, drugs, his cancer battle, and the highest and lowest points of Aerosmith's career for him. I also feature many photos in this show I took backstage of Aerosmith when they were first starting out. So here's Tom.
Well, I'm glad we finally connected. We're anxious to get some coverage on here, you and our next issue. I know you're running late of time. I just wanted to tell you that you were the first member of Aerosmith I ever met back in the 70s. And back in Indiana, I used to come backstage and show you the pictures I took from the last time. And I've got some crazy backstage pictures. I'd love to share those with you someday.
So. Oh, my God. I would love to see those.
Old stage shots, and I talked to Brad and Joey and you, but you were the first one I met. Like, I was 13 and I got in there early. You know, I was a rebel kid without parental supervision going backstage, and I ran up to my girlfriend. I go, I think I see one of those guys in that new band Aerosmith, and it's the blonde one. She goes, oh, well, see, he's got a bluebird tattoo. And I ran over to you, and you showed me your tattoo. I took a picture of it, and then, you know, every time after that, I'd always see you, but you can't remember that. That was like 80 years ago.
That's cool.
Yeah. But
that's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, I'd love to see those pictures somehow.
Yeah, I mean, maybe at the end of the call I can get an email from you, and I'll send you those. There's some funny ones of you and Joe and everything.
Cool.
But anyway, we're so glad. I started the magazine about 5 years ago to focus on bands that I want in the press, and you guys are on the top of my list. I'm so excited to finally get you guys in here. But now, I know you were sidelined from the tour last year. How is your health? Is your throat okay?
That was actually in 06.
Oh, it was? I thought it was last year.
It feels like last year, but it was, I know, it blows my mind when I think about that. Yeah, I had to go through cancer treatment in the summer of 06, and the band went out for that fall on a tour that had already been booked with Motley Crue. Mm-hmm. And I always figured that I would join that tour at some point, but this happens to a lot of people, is that you underestimate how long the recovery is going to be from that treatment, because the treatment sucks. Mm-hmm. It's really nasty, and you know, there's certain milestones that have to come up before you're okay to just, you know, go out and be on the road. Mm-hmm. And so I think what happened was the band was doing a gig in Boston, and Steven called me up and said, why don't you come down and play Sweet Emotion at the Boston gig? And I was really touched, you know, that he thought to do that, and I appreciated kind of him lighting a little fire under my ass. So I went down, and it was a pretty ethereal experience, is to go down there and for the first time in my life see the band running around on stage from more of an outside perspective.
Right. That must have been quite a shock.
Well, you know, it was. I don't know. It was a cool thing. I had really accepted the fact that I was not ready to be out there. So once I accepted that, it made it easier to go and have a moment like that without getting really bummed. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So at any rate, but then I went up on stage and played Sweet Emotion, and I didn't even know that the crowd really knew that much about what I was going through, but it was a really, you know, emotional moment. Mm-hmm. And you know, I pretty much finished and had to get right back in the car and go home.
How is your throat and everything now? Everything good?
Oh, everything is good now, yeah.
Oh, that's
good. They nailed it. They got rid of it.
Oh, good. Well, we're so grateful. We don't want to lose a great rock and roll icon like you.
Thank you.
Now, I did hear that Brad is not out on tour. He had some complications.
Yeah, he had to have a little surgical procedure, which he'll probably talk about in more detail himself. But he's feeling really great, and he's looking to rejoin the tour about 3 weeks from now.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to ask you, if any of the original members were different than they were, do you think that the band would have still made it?
That's a really interesting question, and it's a question that a band member will ponder, too. Like, what would have happened if that combination of personalities was different? Would it have been the same thing? Would it have been bigger, smaller? There's the musical part of it, but there's a lot of it is not musical. A lot of it is the personality chemistry and the mix of personalities. The give and take, and the willingness for give and take. So it's all part of the formula. It's all part of what makes the future of the band.
I was just curious because I read that book, Walk This Way, and it was interesting because it just seemed like, with all the turmoil and everything, that, I don't know, it just seemed like that you guys were meant to be, and just any one person would have not supported each individual thing that the band needed. And, we're all glad it worked out the way it did. But was there anybody that you were closest to? Who were you closest to in the band? I mean...
Well, Joey and I are sort of like two soldiers in the same foxhole. But in the early days, I consider everybody in this band a brother. In the early days, Joe and I were best buddies who played together during high school and then decided to go and see if we can get this guy, Tyler, to join up. And so, I graduated high school in 1970, and we spent the summer playing at clubs up around where I lived in New Hampshire, and then Joe and I said, let's go to Boston, get an apartment, and just see what we can get going.
Where your dad would let you grow your hair long. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that was the summer before. Yeah, I got booted out of the house for that one, which was great. Well, my mother was terrified when she found out about it. But
she must be so proud of you, so happy the way things worked out. I know she was worried about you there, from what I read. Well, what about when the band was just getting going? Like, Joe had his girlfriend, and he was closer to Stephen. Who were you closest to?
Well, Joe and I had kind of a weird friendship. Once the band got going, he had a girlfriend and got married, and I was jealous of that, and other people in the band were jealous of it too. But the bond was always there, and it's like that thing you were talking about before about the supporting each other, and like the chemistry, and how that how you can be supportive if there's something in an environment that really hurts your feelings or whatever. And everybody in the band was just so dying to make it in a rock band that a lot of that stuff would get put to the side. But the thing is, it doesn't really go away. So once the band became successful and we started making money and we all had our own houses and could afford some stuff, that's when a lot of that stuff began to start being really invasive. And, which is why, we had that arc that we had in the 70s where we were, we were playing stadiums and we blew it and broke the band in half.
Right. I was also reading in that book that Tim Collins said that you were the sanest one of all. What did he mean by that, in the fact that maybe you were the most stable and maybe you didn't get into as hard of drugs as the rest of the band?
Well, one of my nicknames in the band is the man of reason, something like that. I'm the one that's always in the middle trying to help two people communicate without freaking out at each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm the one that always wants to take that sort of the voice of reason. That's the name.
Right. Okay.
And I know that. Sometimes it bothers me. Sometimes I wish I was a little more whacked out, because I'd be probably a more interesting character out there. But I guess, there's a reason for this, and so I'm always trying to play that role.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not one of the extremists.
Right. I mean, you don't have to say. I know it's, public record. They got into every kind of drug, but in the book, it only talked about, like, you didn't get into that. You just smoked pot.
I was partying, really hard too all those years, but I was fortunate that, I definitely got to a point where I was, doing it habitually, and, where it was not great for my health, but I never had a, moment where I couldn't play or couldn't show up for rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't want to minimize, but at the same time, I've never been one for trying to put it out there that I was all destroyed on chemicals, and
Right.
that's basically, I just didn't want my parents to have to pick up a book and read about it.
Right.
But it was this was the '70s. It was the era when the Surgeon General made a statement that cocaine was not addictive.
Really?
So it was very. It was not as forbidden as some other drugs that people ruin their lives with.
Right.
I mean, I now know that drug as being a total piece of shit. That I wasted a lot of time and emotional energy on that.
Mm-hmm. So we shouldn't listen to the Surgeon General.
The Surgeon General had his head up his ass on that one.
Yeah. Tell me the highest...
maybe it was because we did a lot more research than he did.
Oh, okay. Yeah. He should have gone on tour with you guys. Would have changed his tune. Tell me the highest high and the lowest low. That just, first thing, I know there's a lot, just pops into your head from the band's career.
I think getting nominated for a Grammy and going on those shows and playing is, there's two aspects. There's the excitement that people in your whole industry want to tell you that they think you're great. So you've got that kind of in your mind, and you're trying not to get all carried away with that. But also, but the main thing in your mind is when you go up and play your song, you want to be friggin' great.
Right.
And that means being great in front of an audience in tuxedos.
Yeah.
First row's about 20 feet away. It's not like a sweating, animated crowd pounding away on the front of the stage. But then, but that's kind of like, it's a feather in your cap to be able to do that.
What was the lowest low?
Oh, I think the lowest low was in the early 80s when Steven and Joey and I had gotten a new guitar player who was a really good guitar player and a really good writer named Jimmy Crespo.
Right. He lives here in Vegas.
Yeah. Right. And but just things were falling apart all over the place, and we did an interesting album called Rockin' a Hard Place. But that came out, and I remember thinking, okay, well, the record's going to come out, everybody's going to go buy it, and we're going to be on tour, and we'll continue, just with new people. And then we got out on tour, and, that's when we learned that the audience wasn't going to accept it.
Right.
And I remember coming home from that tour and really having it hit me that that this could be it. That was when MTV started. And when MTV started, it was a really cool thing. I mean, that was a really exciting new way to experience music. And I realized that, shit, we're not going to be part of it. We're going to miss the boat. And I hated that feeling. And I think everybody in the band did. Because we all love the fact that if we stay together, these new technologies will come down the road that we can be part of.
Right. Well, it all worked out. The girl got gone and, came back together. I mean, from reading the book.
You know what, though? I've learned you don't blame the girl. It's the band member's responsibility. It's not Yoko, it's John.
Well, I know, but reading the book, I mean, I don't know, I hate to name names, but she was like, mocking Steven, and she wanted control over Joe and just like completely put a rift in the band so she could keep him. That's what I see. I don't know.
That's one of those things. It's almost Spinal Tapian.
I was just going to say, did they write Spinal Tap for her? That's the first thing I thought of when I read it.
I think it's a classic situation, and as I said, it's, everybody wants to blame the girl, but it's the band member's responsibility.
Right. Well, was there a defining moment, like, in the band's career where you felt personally like, hey, I'm a rock star, I've really made it? What would that have been?
That's funny, because I really wanted that bad since I was a teenager. I wanted that, I wanted to make it. But I don't remember a moment where I said, okay, I've reached that goal. I've been very much sort of just enjoy it as it comes along, and try not to find moments that are supposed to be just singular moments. It's all a bunch of little ones.
Right now.
But the first time I heard one of our songs on the radio was a huge one for me. That was a really cool feeling, and I knew it was going to come, but I wasn't ready for it. When I was that first album came out, and I was listening to WBCN here in Boston, which is one of the best underground FM stations of that period. And Dream On was coming out of that radio, and I'm like in that car thinking, oh my God, there are people all over this friggin' city that are hearing this right this second.
Were you alone in the car, or were the band members with you?
I don't remember. I don't think there was a band member with me, but I can almost picture it, but not quite. But I remember how the moment felt. It was a real peak.
Since you're the sanest one of all, are you ever going to write a book about all of this?
I've been scribbling stuff. I tend to just accumulate stuff, and I'm kind of ADD, so I like, when I see something that requires a lot of organization, I just kind of veer off into something else. But I've been writing a lot, personal journaling, and writing about the band and for the website, and some material that I wrote for Walk This Way that was used in a certain way, but not exactly how I wrote it. And there's going to be something someday about that, but really, right now, the music is the thing for me. Whatever I accomplish right now and show about myself is going to be based on musical goals.
If Aerosmith never came to be, what career choice do you think you might have chosen?
Well, I probably would have gone to college and studied drama.
Oh, okay.
Because that's what I had in mind.
Did you want to be an actor?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that. That's cool. Just a couple last questions. I know you got a busy schedule on tour there. Does it bother you when people refer to Aerosmith as classic rock?
Not really, because I know it's inevitable. If that means people kind of lump us in with bands that maybe have one or two original members, but still call themselves their original name, no, I don't like that association. But you have the situation, and it was. I don't know whether it was brought on by the Guitar Hero game or the other way, but I remember being in this hotel in Alabama, sitting out at the pool reading USA Today, and the front page had a story that was, why are kids listening to the music their parents listening to? How is this happening? It's not supposed to be like that. And that was about all these kids who were seeking out bands from the 60s and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, guitar music, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was hip-hop got to a point where it wasn't the new shocking thing for kids. And, you know, people in their teens think a lot about differentiating themselves and identifying themselves. And so you had a whole bunch of kids that were saying, well, I don't want to just follow everybody else and automatically be a hip-hop fan. Not that hip-hop isn't great.
Uh-huh.
So they started looking outside that box, and what they found was, you know, hard rock and guitar music from, you know, the, you know, late 60s and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I remember years ago a big influential rock magazine pointing out, you know, who do these guys think they are? They're too old to presume to be the voices of a teenage generation. And I'm like, what the fuck? You know, this over-intellectualization of music, you know, to me, music, I like music because it feels good. I don't remember ever looking for music as a way of, you know, identifying my personality or anything like that. I just like the sensual pleasure of music. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really the truth of everybody. So that's why you can have a generation that will listen to music that their parents listen to because they can't resist the fact that it feels good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of timing and cyclic stuff involved too.
The main thing is you guys are still around, and you know I'm really proud of you, and I know that you're proud of your career, and you know I'm going to do everything I can for the rest of my life to promote rock and roll, and that means you guys. I did want to mention something that just dawned on me. I had a flashback when I was backstage with you 30 years ago. I used to have silver streaks in my hair. Gene Simmons, he always says, he goes, I remember you know, because I showed him a picture. But I remember reading your palm, and I said, wow, you're going to get married 3 times. I think I was a lousy palm reader, because I don't think that happened.
Oh, that's funny.
Are you still with Terry, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and you weren't married before then, you know? God, I was way off. Because I remember Joe, he was sitting there laughing. He goes, well, you're about there, aren't you, Tom? And I thought, oh, so I'm right. You're getting to get married for the 3rd time. We were laughing. It was funny. But, well, thank the world of you, Tom. We love you here in Vegas, and can't wait to see you next month.
Great, thanks. We're looking forward to it.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time and answering such great responses and questions.
And thank you.
Okay. Have a good day, Tom. Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in. We will see you right here next week. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you on the streets of rock and roll.